Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of our interview with Dr. Paul Robertson, founder of TESOL One and Scope Organization. In our previous segment, Dr. Paul shared with us his profound experience with Jesus that changed the course of his life and his journey from being a school dropout to a paramedic, then to a doctor. And today we will delve deeper in this inspiring work with the Soul, One and Scope app that Dr. Paul have shared with us. Welcome back, Dr. Paul.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, thanks. I've had time for my coffee break, but I still have one here. I'm going to sip in between a few chats. It's great to move on to this segment and some more discussion and chats in this uh,
Okay.
amazing and unbelievable topic.
Thank you. So let's start by discussing the inspiration behind your founding of TESOL One and the Scope organization. What drove you to create these initiatives, Doctor?
Well, that's I see you've begun with the hardest question. And how did this begin? It kind of just had a soft beginning, but I mean, this is all ordained, I think, by God. I was sitting on a beach in Greece in 1993 or 1992, having a holiday. I'd retired, and this chap came up and just said, "My English teacher's sick." He was Greek. "Do you speak English? Can you help me out?" I said, "Well, I'm here for a week. I got free time. I'd love to help you out," knowing nothing about teaching. So he took me to his school and put me in his class and gave me an English book. And I guess from there, I mean, at that moment in time, I think I was the worst English teacher in the world, honestly. It was a terrifying, terrifying moment in life. But it's how my new stage of life began. I stayed there for a year or so, researching education, and then getting more into how do people learn, a bit of medical, bit of neuroscience, a bit of language acquisition. And that's how that began a long time ago. And I think along the way, I mean, I can only say God guided me, because in high school when I dropped out, I didn't say, look, in 1997, I'm going to finish the PhD. In 2003, I'm going to do the second PhD. And in 2017, I'm going to open the world's largest academic company on language acquisition. So no one else is guiding me, so I can only say that God has guided every second of this. The journey's only just begun. And I'm not
Wow.
sure where the journey is going, but I'm only at the beginning.
Mhm.
I think we, in the world I'm in now, we as educators, we've got a huge role to play. We're influencing people's lives, whether we know it or not. Especially, we'll take the English teachers here in the Philippines, or the 96 million English teachers around the world. Everything we do and say, we're teaching something neurologically totally different to what students learn. So we're guiding lives, we're influencing lives, we as the English teacher. This is kind of where I think, from an English teaching point of view, I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg. I think for the last 40 years, if I might criticize English language acquisition teaching, we haven't learned anything. We've stayed in the 1980s. We seem afraid to make the big breakthrough to the 2020s. And what I learned back in 1990s in the PhD language acquisition, people are still talking about it now. This is 30 years later. And I say, let's forget about all this stuff we learned 30 years ago. Let's start talking about, I'm calling it neuroscience. Let's make the quantum leap. And a few people are coming on board, a few academics and teachers, but it's kind of uncomfortable. but I know that's the direction. I mean, I know that's the direction I've got to take. This goes back to my Medine Sala day. I mean, you know, my final words of the poem, boundless and endless endures eternity. We're here forever. This journey is not just our lifetime, whether we be 50 or 100. Our journey continues beyond in the new, I call it the new world, our new, wherever we go into this, the world of God after. But what we leave behind here is critical. If I have a lot of knowledge, but if I don't pass some on to you and you pass it to someone else, you know, I think we've missed a golden opportunity to help millions and millions and millions of kids all over the world. Because from what I hear, there's 2 billion young language learners in the world. I think English teachers play a critical role in the future of our world. I really do. We've got to get out of 1990s. We've got to get into the 2020s and start thinking a bit differently. And this is kind of my journey, the journey that started back in, well, the Vietnam War. And it continues, but I'm only at an early stage, and I just hope there's someone who can follow in my footsteps. I don't meet too many people who see the future like me, believe it or not. Most people tend to see today and tomorrow and the next payday. That's life. It's all over the world. We really have to see the next 50, 60, 70 years. We've got to start thinking about it here and now. We can't just plan about the exam next week. We can't plan about the English lesson next week.
All right.
Which
That's great.
it also goes to the teaching of religion. I think we have to expand our knowledge, break free from some barriers, and bring more people, whether it doesn't matter whether it's the Muslim, Islam, Hindu, or Christianity. I think we've still got huge steps to take, not only in English language, but it's almost like the world is just beginning.
I agree. That's fascinating. And I hope that many people will also be realize that. And doctor, can you please share with us what will be uh the role of TESOL 1 and Scope Up that work together to achieve their shared goals?
Well, I think that's a good question, and like the journey, I have an answer now, which will probably be very different in 2 years' time. But what I see and how it began, TESOL 1 is kind of the parent. What I saw in the last 20, 30 years, teachers do far more than teaching, far more than teaching. The community work they do all over the world, teachers, academics, undergrad students. It's not just about studying to get a degree or a master's or a PhD. All of us, and there's millions and millions of academics and students, 2 billion to be exact. We're all doing something great in a small way, which is never recognized. And I think it's time that, doesn't matter if you just, walk around the schoolyard with your team and clean it once a week. There's a community service that's so valuable. I take this one step further. My daughter, Filipino daughter, but I guess she's dual nationality now. But she got excited, and she opened a website called TESOL.earth, which is her vision, watching me. And she's come to some conferences about how to save the planet with pollution and climate warming. So a bit of me's rubbed off onto her. So her school in Cebu is very much into climate change and what little things a school can do. So this is where, someone like me might have, 10 degrees, big deal. It's the kids out there. They need recognition so that, like, when my daughter's 20 or 21, her CV is not just going to be, grade A, triple A, that sort of stuff. But the second part is about what she did for the community in the Philippines. to me, that's everything. And this is what struck a note with teachers and academics across the world. They're like me, you know, we've got a beautiful CV like you know, I've got this degree and this degree, and I taught this and I taught that. But on the community side, it's empty. So that's how Scope, I don't know how it came about. I can only say God put this into my brain and said, Scope, and said scientific community of professional educators. It came from nowhere else. And and then I started it with the help of a great Filipino partner who sadly passed away recently. So Scope is more about, for example, we can highlight the academic and teaching career and even the undergraduate career. But to me, that's meaningless. It's the community. What has someone done in the community? What have they done for the world? Whether it be a tiny school community or the city community, like my daughter and her team, they cleaned I use the word creek. I'm not sure if that's the word in the Philippines, creek. A lot of rubbish and garbage was in the creek. You know, these people are valuable, and so that's what Scope is about. Scope's about not just, you know, you've got 2 degrees, great, you're a doctor, you're a scientist, you're a dentist, big deal. You actually did something to slow down climate change or make awareness. And for me, that's the most important thing. And even yesterday, surprisingly, there was a group of business people, not academics, investors and business people, who, when I talked about this, they were like, whoa, we've never heard anybody talk like this before. So I think the journey, whatever it is I'm on, is just beginning. And we need a lot more people to follow me. So Scope is the vehicle. At the moment, I'm the driver, but the people of the world are the engine. When I'm not here, someone like you or my daughter just takes over the reins, bringing the good things from the teaching world, the student world. And let's look at the numbers. There's almost 2.5 billion students out there. We
That's
can't just
amazing.
pretend they're not there. Every student does something good. And so we have to highlight that in some way. So that's kind of the journey. TESOL 1 just became more of a parent to guide things legally. That's my legal side. The academic journal brings in academics around the world who love the idea. So for many years, they've got what's called an H. My H is H21. Wow. You know, my research has been read by so many people. I'm H21. And that's how academics talk. And they say, what's your H? And I said, I don't care what your H is. What have you done? What have you actually done in your community? And then they say, well, I've done lots of things. And I say, who knows? Who have you told? Well, nobody knows. But you're telling me you're an H21. I want to know, you know, what you did for the old folks' home. This is where it's at. This is what makes you a valuable person of the world. So that's kind of Scope was originally meant just for our world of teachers and students,
Wow.
universities, colleges, and schools. But the few people, I don't talk to too many people. The people I talk to say, well, why don't you include, for example, dentists and doctors? They do a lot of good things. Why don't you include engineers? Why are you just limiting it? So I think the future of Scope has untold potential. Luckily, well, I'm kind of alone on this, but I spend many hours talking to God. We know my thoughts on God. I had that experience in Middle East. I know I'm talking to someone who's there, who's listening, and I know the guidance will come. So nothing's going to happen overnight, but I think, to use an idiom, I've started the ball rolling, maybe my daughter will carry it on and on. And the Philippines is where we begin. Philippines is very unique. It's, I'm not critical. It's a poor country with huge potential. So, and it's providing the English teachers of the world. And we know pre-pandemic that the English teachers of the world all came from the Philippines. So that's kind of the big story where scope brings in the big picture of your academic life, your community life. But I think, like I said, that's step one. And
Wow, that's amazing. Oh, uh, you have mentioned about the community a while ago. Uh, how are you going to ensure that the scope and the SOL one are accessible to the communities worldwide?
yeah, that is a good question. I think there's two answers to this. Number one, and this was the starting point, that scope, people can get a beautiful page, ID, CV, absolutely free. Anybody, like I said, my thinking was a bit myopic, only educators, but now maybe we can expand. So anybody can fill in the questions and the algorithm will come up and give you your community work values and your education values. So everybody, nobody's blocked from being in. I mean, free is free. Um,
Mm.
People, in the Philippines, we've had well over 60,000. It's a trial run, well over 60,000 in the trial run to test out the algorithms and the coding. Many of them actually bought the card. It's a very beautiful ID card. So there is a small financial side to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are some expenses, naturally, the coders and all that sort of stuff. But basically, the whole world can join, nothing to stop. I'm thinking when I say the whole world, I don't know if we can allow students in some countries. There are some laws that prohibit students, but most countries allow students in their final year, the final year before university, to enter information. And I see this, I mean, a university might be considering you, maybe you're 17 years old, looking at your application. Well, what's she done? Well, she's done this. But then if you've listed all your community events, I think that university or college or employer might say, well, look at her community work. Look at this person. Whoa. She's got an A for English, an A for maths, but she's done the following projects. So that's kind of a 2 or 3 year vision for upper high school, country by country. Philippines is a great beginning place. I'm getting lots of feedback, lots of advice, lots of thoughts from all over. It's kind of the testing, the staging. I think the Philippines is the staging ground for scope, but maybe maybe in 2 or 3 times, like 10 or 15 years ago, we said the word Facebook. Wow, Facebook! Have you got a Facebook? And I think, if I'm not wrong, Friendster might have been the first one, a Philippine invention. If we go way back, I think Friendster was the forerunner to
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. So, maybe in 5 years we can say Scope is it's taken over from LinkedIn, Scope's taken over from Facebook. I think, not just my thinking, I mean, the meeting I had recently with all these investors and others, they saw something similar. So it's step by step, but I feel like we're a snowball at the top of the mountain, and very quickly
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be the avalanche. Exciting time, scary time, uncertain time. Many questions, no answers. Just, well, yeah. I think, I spend a lot of time in my thoughts talking to God, and the answer does come back. I get the answer in the most unusual ways. about the direction. For example, I thought, is this a waste of time? Why am I doing this, for example? And then only a few days ago, this group of 20 investors has me online wanting to know the future. How do we bring the world together? So you see how it's not just me, it's God who directs every little movement with a reason. We don't see the reason here and now.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Wow, that's amazing. But can you share with us some of the challenges that you have met so far in your journey with this TESOL and scope?
well, I think every day brings a challenge because you're doing something new.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a model, and you always have self-doubts. Is this a waste of time? Will it work? Um, the scope is so big. Is it humanly possible? Self-doubt is, sometimes I think, is it easier to walk away and just retire and watch football every day? But then I think, no, I'd be abandoning something which has, it's the future of the world. Somehow, the future of the world, the future of the planet is tied up inside scope and the community values, the community deeds we do. Not whether you're Elon Musk or whether you're Donald, I forget his name, Donald, the ex-president. It's not whether you're a billionaire, whether you're Bill Gates. It's about people like you and me who can really change the world in a meaningful way, So some days are hard, some days are exciting, but I am glad I'm in the Philippines. I think if I was in Australia or Korea or other countries, I wouldn't be in the right frame of mind. The Philippines is a very special country, economically, religiously, with special people, the language. And I do get a lot of feedback from all levels of Filipinos, whether the doctor next door or the kids across the road live in a squatters camp. They give me incredible feedback. So the future, I mean, I see these kids, I mean, there must be thousands and thousands in this huge squatters camp. And you
Mm-hmm.
think, what's the future for these people? The future is not here. These people have something to give to the world. How do we get them out of here? They can all do something great. So that's the challenge. But it's not the impossible challenge. It's not the impossible dream. I find it important. Like yesterday, talking to some people who actually gave great feedback. At least this wasn't the craziest idea in the world. I mean, look at the chap who invented electricity. Everybody said he was insane. This would never work, they said. I forget his name, but he said I can light a city in 10 minutes, and they all said you're insane. So it's a bit like that.
All right.
Um,
How are you going to uh, invite the people who are interested to join, like community organizations, looking to make a positive impact to the field of education and community development?
that's a good
Mm.
question, and I come back to, I think, luckily, number one, I'm in the Philippines, and I think this is where it begins. This is where the story begins, because I do have the teacher training arm, so I'm connected to many schools and colleges and universities. I have the academic arm, and we're connected to many law schools around the Philippines. And the journals are into medicine, neurological research, law, legal English, etc., etc. So I think this is where it starts, and I think it just starts with a simple conference. For example, I'm going to ask you to give the key speech. We invite 100 or 200 people to listen to what we think the plan for the future, our dream, the mission for the world starts here. And then the feedback from the audience is very valuable. I found that in the past. I've held many, many law conferences and medical conferences. It's not giving the conference, it's the feedback.
How can individuals and organizations can get involved to TESOL
Right,
and TESOL 1 and scope up so that
right,
they can make an impact also to make a difference?
right. That's a hard question.
Mhm.
But I think, like I said, TESOL 1 is just a parent. Scope is the vehicle. And I think the scope of scope is unlimited. And the more we think about it, the more potential it has for bringing communities under the umbrella of scope. And each community does something good for the community, the wider community. It doesn't matter whether it's Islam, Christianity, Hindu, the Saudi, the Muslim. The communities doing good for communities. That's kind of where scope is. Scope doesn't play politics. Scope doesn't favor religions. It just tries to highlight the good in people and bring the good out. I think that's where we need to be. I think
Wow.
that's where we need to be. So, yeah, simple project.
That's being spiritual. That's more on the soul. That's more on the for me, that's being the world needs now. It's not more on the intellectual. It's not more on the achievement. It's not more on the accomplishment. You're making a difference, really. And you're
You're right.
great because of that.
You're right. We're too focused on educational greatness,
Mhm.
but we seem to have forgotten that there's people down there somewhere, you know.
Yes.
So you're right there. Um,
Yeah, because
yeah,
that is God wants us now. That is what God wants the people. It's not more on, I believe, yeah, going to the church, attending ritual events are important, but there is something beyond. We must transcend. There is a transcendence that we need to have right now in our religiosity. And that is what makes spirituality. You can be very religious, but you are not spiritual. But you may
right.
not be a religious person, but you are spiritual because of what you are doing, making a difference, making an impact, involvement of the community, the values
Yeah,
that are needed now.
that's it. It's the global community we have to bring together, not just small communities, but scope has to be a global community. The left hand education, sure, that's great, but the right hand, it's about the impact that everyday people do in good things, helping the world, helping their neighbor. It's yeah. But you see, what I see is lots of people start out like me, from what I've seen, but it all finishes up in commercialism. It all finishes up in dollars and money. And the actual idea you start with, the people along the way get bought out. So that's where the world is kind of going, you know. That's what I've got to be careful of. I mean, there's no doubt one day scope will be bought, but you know, you can't just sell it to Elon Musk, who would turn it into some nightmare, which is what the Americans tend to do with everything commercially. We need someone, you know, like the Muhammadiyah organization in Indonesia. That's the large, you know, Islam group, hundreds of thousands of academics, etc., doing good in Indonesia. Um, yeah, it almost means like we out of this, we need to almost form a group. You and I can talk, but if 10 other people are throwing ideas in, someone might, oh, that's what we need. the two of us can do this much, but if I find 4, 5, 6, 7, or 10, the vision, I've got an idea and you can say, great idea, it's never going to work because, and then I say, well, you got a great idea, but what if we just do A, B, and not C? And that's where I think this is going. Maybe Scope needs a global oversight committee. I mean, my daughter's TESOL Earth is going to go somewhere big time. I mean, she gets invited to give talks in in conferences, but I'm not letting her leave the Philippines. She's too young. So she's on the right track. I mean, and if we can encourage or excite more young learners like the daughter to think about the world, she'll get into university. I think she'll do law, but law for the good of the world, not law just for the sake of money. I think that's kind of where we're at. I mean, you're already in the teaching community, so you've got a starting point. But yeah.
So final words for those people who are willing to also make a difference and make an impact, and what role can they play in this TESOL 1 and scope?
All right. So some final words on Scope. Scope has a global vision. Obviously, the vision is being led by God, who's guiding me, and the vision is becoming clearer and clearer. We have to start helping people. We have to bring the world together. There are many ways we can do that. And I think Scope will be the step. How do we begin we're in the Philippines. How do we begin here? I think we need a small community to get together, sit around on Zoom, or actually sit around in a school somewhere and throw ideas out. That's how these good ideas start. Everybody has a different idea, and at the end of the day, 10 people, we say, well, this is the direction we are taking the Philippines in Scope, because this is where Scope is born, in the Philippines, and it's going to lead the world. So I think one of the next steps is maybe we'll try and get a small community of people thinking like us, people in the religious community and people who are helping people help people. That's where the value and the goodness lies in people. And we'll get together and work out, how do we bring this big picture of academia, teaching, community values, community help? How do we start here in the Philippines? Because what we start here will become a world movement. Absolutely. And I've always said this is the place to start. So maybe we can get some of your audience to write in suggestions and ideas. I'd like to get together with 10 or 20 people in a room or on Zoom. Oh, in a room or Zoom, that rhymes. And see where we take this. Where do we take this for the Philippines? We're starting in the Philippines. It's a huge country, 130 million people, I think, spread across tens of thousands of miles. How do we begin in the Philippines and take this model? If we get the model right, the world is going to follow the Philippines in Scope. Absolutely. It's going to start with countries like Africa, South America, and very quickly the rich countries of the world, the Americas, the Australias, not too many rich countries left, actually. They will start to see the movement across the world. And that's when I think things will change. We're in a fragile state now. We've got wars in the Middle East. We've got wars in Europe. We've got, potential issues in the South China Sea. There's potential issues in South America. It's all getting pretty, Cambodia. We've got Vietnam, Cambodia, Southern China issues. We have to act. We don't have time. We can't just sit around and say, let's just come back in 6 months and do something. I think we got to do, at the end of this video when it's up, let's see if we can get some people to write in. How can we come together, take Scope to the world, doesn't matter how crazy the idea, how small the idea. Let's get everybody thinking. I can think a little bit, but I need a lot of help, a lot of advice. Maybe that's our next step. Let's make Scope. The birth of Scope begins now in the Philippines.
Amazing. That's great. And I will really support you. I can invite more people around the world as I have connections through virtual, Zoom, or whatever it is. As long as we have one common goal, we may be separated by language, time, space, and even culture. But as long as we are united with one goal, and that is to make this world a better place for the new generation, with the help of God, with the help of the Holy Spirit, with our spirituality, everything will be positive. And thank you so much for sharing with us this profound vision and mission, and for trying to make a difference, not just trying, but starting this journey to perfection with God's grace. God bless you, and thank you so much once again, Dr. Paul Robertson.
Right.
I salute you for your generosity of time.
Well, I
And
salute you for what you're doing. So, congratulations to you. All right, it's been great. I've loved this, and I look forward to our next step.
okay.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. So, my dear audience, followers, I hope that you will follow us in our next conversation, and I hope that you will join us not only in prayers but in action. This is Miss Cherry. God bless you. Today is the day that we have heard the word of God. Let us do the task that the Lord has given us today. Have a nice day, everyone. God bless us all. Amen.